You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin.
The clink of silverware on fine china felt louder than it should have, each note stabbing through the thick silence that sat between me, Jenna, and Dale. The annual banquet of Kingston Transport was always a slick affair. Black tie, fancy hors d'oeuvres, and the heavy buzz of self-congratulation. I used to hate these events. Now I just felt out of place. Dale Kingston, CEO, sitting at the head of the table like he owned the room, flashed a grin my way. His voice was smooth, but the sarcasm was sharp enough to draw blood. "So, Mike," he said, leaning back in his chair, his eyes glinting in the ambient candlelight, "you've decided to stay home, taking care of your mom? That's real noble. I mean, who needs a career when you've got house husband duties to attend to, right?" He laughed, and a few people chuckled along half-heartedly. I kept my face neutral. I knew what he was doing, poking fun at me for quitting my job as a logistics planner. A real job in his eyes. A paycheck I'd walked away from to help take care of my mom, who was sick, slipping away. But that didn't matter to Dale. What mattered was the power he held, and how he could tear anyone down to make himself feel bigger. I glanced over at Jenna, sitting quietly beside me, her fingers fiddling with the stem of her wine glass. I noticed she didn't react to Dale's words. Not a flinch, not a word, just a quiet acceptance of the whole thing. Then Dale's hand brushed against her back, just enough for me to notice. I wasn't sure if it was intentional, but I saw the way she didn't pull away. It was subtle, but it didn't escape me. "Jenna's been working hard, right?" I said, my voice calm, but pointed. "I bet it must feel nice to have a real career while some of us play house." I leaned back in my chair, eyes fixed on Dale's. "I mean, you'd know. Your wife's been too busy to show up at these events lately, hasn't she?" The smile slipped off Dale's face for a second, but it was just long enough for me to see the tension in his jaw. He shifted in his seat, suddenly more interested in his drink than in the conversation. The rest of the night was a blur. Dale and Jenna chatting like old friends, their voices low and intimate, like the world around them didn't exist. I sat there, quiet, letting the pieces fall into place. Jenna's smile wasn't just for me anymore, and I was starting to think it hadn't been for a long time. The drive home was quiet. Jenna kept her eyes on the road, her hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tight. I sat beside her, my fingers tapping lightly on the seat, trying to keep my anger in check. I wasn't sure what bothered me more, the way Dale treated me or the way Jenna just let him. "So, what was that all about tonight?" I asked, keeping my tone casual like it didn't eat at me. She shot me a quick glance, then focused back on the road. "What do you mean?" "You know, Dale's little comments. The way he talked about me like I'm some kind of joke." My voice didn't waver, but I could feel the sting in my chest. "And the way he touched you." I didn't want to say it, but it came out anyway. She exhaled sharply, her foot pressing harder on the gas. "Mike, you're overreacting. It's nothing." "Nothing?" I echoed, my voice rising before I could stop it. "You think that's nothing?" He mocked me in front of everyone. Made me look like some pathetic idiot who couldn't keep a job, and you didn't say a word. Her knuckles turned white as she tightened her grip on the wheel. "I wasn't going to argue with him at dinner. It's not worth it." "Not worth it?" I shook my head. "You didn't even defend me, Jenna. And then I had to bite my tongue to keep from yelling. You didn't even pull away when he touched you." She sighed like it was all too much, like she'd heard this 100 times before. "Mike, stop. Dale's just a friend. You're being paranoid." "Paranoid?" I repeated. "You don't see it, do you? You've been changing, Jenna. The late nights, the new clothes, the way you're always on your phone. You think I don't notice?" She shot me a sharp look, her voice hard. "I'm working, Mike. I've got responsibilities. And you gave up a real job to take care of your mother. You think this is easy for me?" Her words stung. The way she said real job like it was a reminder of everything I had lost. I took a breath, trying to keep it calm, trying not to snap. "I chose this, Jenna. I chose to take care of her. It wasn't about the money or a career. It was about what mattered. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Her gaze stayed straight ahead, and the silence in the car felt thick, like it was suffocating us. Finally, she muttered, "I can't do this right now." And just like that, she shut down. Her eyes focused forward, and her posture stiffened. It was like she was no longer even in the same car with me. We didn't talk again until we pulled into the driveway. I didn't wait for her to say anything. She was already out of the car, heading straight for the front door. I followed behind her, but there was a space between us now, a distance that wasn't just physical. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just moved through the house like I wasn't even there. She headed straight for the bathroom, turning on the shower with a soft hiss. I heard the water running, and the sound was like a wall between us. She'd started this routine a few weeks ago, showering before bed, staying in there for what felt like hours. It was one of those little things that had slipped past me at first, but now I saw it. Like so many other things, she had carved out space for herself where I didn't fit. I sat down on the couch, in the dark, just staring at the walls. The stillness of the house was suffocating, and I couldn't help but think about how much had changed. The late nights, the way she'd started dressing differently, more polished, more put together. I remembered the time we used to spend together, the easy moments when we didn't have to say anything to feel close. That was slipping away, and I wasn't sure if I was the only one who noticed. She came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, her wet hair hanging loose around her shoulders. She didn't look at me when she passed by. I sat there, alone, in the dark, and it hit me all at once. She's already gone. She was still physically here, still sleeping in our bed. But she wasn't really mine anymore. Not the way she used to be. I didn't have answers yet. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to keep pretending I didn't see it. I was still sitting in the dark when Jenna's tablet sat there on the kitchen counter, blinking at me like it was begging to be noticed. She'd forgotten it on her way out earlier. Just another one of those careless moments. I didn't even have to think twice. I picked it up, unlocked it with her password, a combo of our anniversary and her birthday, and there it was, sitting wide open like she just left it for me to find. The first email was casual enough. A quick note from Dale about a meeting, a catching up type of thing. But the next one made my stomach tighten, my pulse pick up speed. It was flirty, lighthearted, too familiar. The kind of thing you don't send unless you're comfortable with someone. Too comfortable. I scrolled through, each one getting more intimate, more suggestive. They talked about private dinners, stolen moments, and the kind of private jokes that weren't meant for anyone else. Some emails were just words, others had receipts attached, hotel bills, dinner tabs at places I knew Dale would love. The dates went back over 6 months. I couldn't breathe, couldn't stop scrolling, couldn't stop the anger building up inside me. They'd been at this for months, longer than I'd known, longer than I'd been wanting to know. One email caught my eye, though. Dale had written, "I'm counting down the days till we can finally take that trip together. Just you and me." That line made my chest tighten with something more bitter than anger. It was the kind of thing that made you feel stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. They'd already planned their future, while I was sitting here playing the fool. I grabbed my phone, snapped photos of the emails, the receipts, the dates. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with them, but I couldn't let this slip away. I had to make sure there was proof. I could feel the weight of everything settling in. The distance, the lies, the betrayal, all of it. Just as I finished taking the last picture, I heard the front door open. I didn't panic. I didn't scramble. I just sat back, wiped my hands on my jeans, and pretended like nothing was different. Jenna walked into the kitchen, looking frazzled, like she'd forgotten something. She grabbed the tablet, not even looking at me. "I left this here this morning," she said, not meeting my eyes. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, watching her for a moment, the weight of everything sitting between us. "You okay?" she asked, her voice a little too bright. "Yeah, fine," I said, keeping my voice steady. I didn't need to say anything else. I didn't need to make this bigger than it already was. She glanced at me quickly, then turned to leave again, rushing out of the house like she couldn't get away from me fast enough. As soon as the door clicked shut behind her, I pulled my laptop from my bag and uploaded the photos to a private cloud. Everything was backed up, safe. There was no turning back now. Then, I opened a new document and titled it, Steps. I wasn't in a rush. I wasn't making any mistakes. This would be on my terms. I started typing, outlining what I needed to do. Gather more proof, figure out why they'd done this, understand their motives, and eventually, when the time was right, expose them. I wasn't angry. I was cold. This wasn't a burst of emotion or a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was strategy, and I was damn good at it. The screen glowed in the darkness, the only light in the room. I felt my pulse slow as I typed. One step at a time, I told myself. There was no rush. No need to rush into something that would ruin everything. I would wait for the right moment. Let them think everything was fine. Let them keep making mistakes. But sooner or later, I was going to make them pay for this. And I was going to do it on my terms. 2 weeks passed, and the house felt colder each day. Jenna kept her distance, slipping into routines that weren't mine. I could feel the space between us growing, but I didn't care. I was too focused on the plan, on what I needed to do next. I'd learned how to track things, how to keep an eye on details without being seen. Back when I was working in logistics and systems auditing, I'd had to keep an eye on everything: numbers, schedules, and people. Nothing slipped past me. Not back then and not now. The first step was setting up surveillance in the home office. The desktop Jenna used for her remote work was always on, and I knew she rarely logged out. I spent a few hours late one night installing a keystroke logger. It was discreet, something that would track every word she typed without her ever knowing. It wasn't illegal, at least not in the way I was doing it. This was about gathering facts, about watching her behavior. I needed to know more. Next, I moved on to her car. She drove it every day, so it wasn't hard to slip a GPS tracker under the dashboard when she was out. She never noticed the small device, hidden beneath the plastic casing. It would track her every move, give me a clear picture of where she was, who she was with when she wasn't at home. I needed to build a timeline of their rendezvous, of all the little lies she was telling. Business lunches, late-night strategy meetings. Those were the things she mentioned in passing, but now I'd know where they really went. Over the course of those 2 weeks, I watched it all unfold. Her car left the house at strange hours, mornings, afternoons, sometimes late into the night. Dale's name popped up on her phone, always in those quiet, unspoken moments when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The emails, the texts, the meetings, they all lined up. They couldn't hide it. I had the data now. I wasn't the only one digging. I reached out to Carly, an old contact from HR at Jenna's company. Carly was smart, sharp, and willing to talk. We hadn't spoken in a few years, but I knew if anyone could shed light on what was really happening behind the scenes, it was her. "Hey, Mike." Carly's voice crackled through the phone. "It's been a while. What's up?" "Not much," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just wanted to ask you about something. Company stuff. Jenna's been moving up pretty fast, hasn't she?" There was a pause on the other end. Then Carly laughed, low and knowing. "Yeah, fast, all right. You could say that. Is it deserved?" I asked, the words tasting like acid in my mouth. "Mike, come on," she said, dropping the friendly tone. "You know how this works. People in power have connections. And Jenna? She's not an exception. It's an open secret around here. You don't think Dale had something to do with her rise?" I let the silence sit there, then asked, "So you're saying this isn't all because of her work?" "No," Carly replied, blunt as always. "I think we both know what's going on. Look, I'm not saying she didn't work hard, but Dale's been influencing things for a while now. There's talk that her quick promotions, they came with favors." I leaned back, swallowing the bitter taste in my mouth. "What kind of favors? You really want to know?" Carly asked, her voice softer now. I could hear the hesitation. "It's not just about the promotions, Mike. There's something else going on. Something bigger. Dale's been manipulating the numbers. The quarterly reports. The ones the board loves. They're off, Mike. He's tweaking the operational costs, inflating fleet productivity, hiding some of the maintenance costs. It's all to attract investors, get more cash pumped into the company. She paused. And Jenna's been caught up in it. She doesn't know everything, but she's in the middle of it. I can tell you that much. The weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about a cheap affair. This was about money, power, and a system built on lies. Dale had been playing a game, and he was using Jenna as one of the pawns. Do you think anyone knows? I asked, my voice low, almost a whisper. There's whispers, Carly said. But no one's stupid enough to blow it up. Not yet. Too much at stake. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. I had more pieces to the puzzle now, but I wasn't ready to confront it. Not yet. I still needed more evidence. Over the next few days, I kept everything in motion. I kept tracking, watching the data, feeding the fire of my plan. I knew the truth now. Dale wasn't just screwing me over. He was screwing over an entire company, using my wife to line his pockets and boost his reputation. I could feel it now, the walls closing in. It was just a matter of time. I spent the next few days buried in numbers. My mind was sharp, more focused than I'd felt in months. Dale had made a mistake. He had played a dangerous game, and now I was going to expose it piece by piece. I started digging into the fleet productivity reports. I'd seen enough of them when I was still working in logistics to know when something didn't add up. It didn't take long before I found the first red flag. Route times were consistently inflated. Trucks that should have completed routes in 3 hours were logged at 6. The kind of discrepancy that didn't just look suspicious. It screamed fraud. But it didn't stop there. I found multiple ghost truck entries, routes listed for trucks that didn't even exist in the system. And the maintenance logs were tampered with, trucks showing as serviced when they hadn't been anywhere near the shop. I knew enough to understand the scope of it. Dale was using these inflated numbers to attract investment. It was all about showing the company as more efficient than it actually was. More trucks on the road, longer hours, but none of it was real. It was a fake empire, built on lies and padded statistics. I needed more confirmation, though. Someone who could help connect the dots. Someone who knew the internal workings of the company. That's when I remembered Tarek, a quiet guy from the data analysis team at Jenna's company. I'd met him once at a company mixer. He wasn't a talker, kept to himself, but there was something about him that always felt off. Like he knew something, but was too scared to say it. I'd heard rumors that he'd been sidelined after he raised concerns about the numbers. He'd probably seen things that didn't sit right with him. I reached out to him under the guise of wanting to catch up. We met at a coffee shop in a quiet part of town, away from the office. Tarek looked the same, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders hunched like he was always carrying some kind of burden. "Mike," he greeted me with a tight nod, sitting down across from me. "It's been a while." "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone casual. "I've been hearing some things, Tarek, about the numbers. The ones you've been crunching. Something doesn't add up, man." He stiffened, looking around like he was afraid someone would hear. I don't know what you mean," he muttered, his voice low. "Come on, Tarek," I pressed, lowering my voice. "I know you've seen it. The ghost trucks, the inflated hours. Dale's been cooking the books. I'm just trying to understand why." Tarek swallowed, his eyes darting nervously. I raised concerns about it," he whispered, glancing around again before dropping his gaze to the table. "But no one listens. They shut me down. Dale's got everyone by the balls. He's making it all look good for the investors. But it's all fake. They're inflating everything, routes, hours, even the maintenance logs." I leaned in closer, feeling a thrill of confirmation at his words. "So what else do you know?" He hesitated, then pulled out a folder from his bag, slipping it across the table to me. "I got these files. Internal reports. Shows how the numbers are being manipulated. If you want the proof, it's all in there." I took the folder, my hands cold as I held it. The weight of it felt like a concrete block, but the thrill of having the evidence was undeniable. I couldn't wait to go through it, to see the full extent of the fraud. Tarek's voice was quieter now, almost a whisper. "You don't know the half of it. There's more. People who've tried to raise flags. They're either silenced or pushed out. Jenna's involved in all of it. She's just too far gone to see it anymore. I froze at the mention of Jenna's name. What do you mean, involved? Tarek looked at me, his face shadowed with something I couldn't quite read. She knows what's going on. I've seen the emails. She knows about the fake numbers, about the manipulation. And from what I've heard, she's helping keep things running smoothly. She keeps the husband distracted. That's how it's been. She's in the middle of it, Mike. I felt the ground shift beneath me. All this time, I'd been thinking I was the one being distracted, but Jenna had been playing me, just as much as she was playing Dale. I sat there for a moment, the words sinking in. Tarek didn't say anything more. There was nothing else to say. He had given me the tools, the proof I needed. The rest was on me. I left the coffee shop in a haze, my mind racing as I went through the files Tarek had given me. Each one was a nail in the coffin, each report more damning than the last. The full extent of the manipulation was worse than I'd imagined. And then I came across something else. A trail of emails between Jenna and Dale talking about everything. The fake reports, their meetings, their plans. I felt the heat rise in my chest again, but it wasn't anger. It was the realization that I'd been played. Jenna had been in on it all along, and I hadn't seen it. I sat with the stack of papers, the evidence spread out in front of me like a map of betrayal. My mind was turning, figuring out the next step. I couldn't just walk into Jenna's office and make a scene. No, I needed something more strategic. I needed to play this game smarter. That's when I reached out to Chris Valdez. He was an old family friend, someone who'd always had his head on straight. Back in the day, we talk about everything: life, business, the future. He turned into a successful business lawyer over the years, and I knew he was the kind of guy who could help me navigate this mess. I met him at a quiet bar downtown, a place we used to grab beers in when life was simpler. Chris looked the same: sharp suit, an easy smile, and that calm, reassuring presence that always made you feel like everything would be all right. Except, this time, I needed him for something I couldn't even talk about without my insides twisting. He didn't waste time after I laid out the mess I was in. The affair, the fraud, the lies. Everything was on the table. "So, Mike," he said, flipping through the pages I handed him, glancing over the emails and receipts. "It's pretty clear you've got a case. You've got solid evidence here." His eyes met mine. "But if you want to go after Dale and Jenna both, you need to think ahead. Legally, you've got two fronts, personal and professional. As for the divorce, you don't want to make a move until you've got all your ducks in a row. Get the upper hand before you file." He leaned back, taking a long sip of his drink. "I'd advise you to be methodical. Keep your emotions in check. If you go public without the right leverage, you might lose control. You want to take them down, Mike? Then you make sure you've got everything lined up. Proof of the affair, proof of the fraud, and this is key: get her to slip up." I nodded slowly, absorbing every word. This wasn't just about punishing Jenna and Dale. It was about making sure I didn't get steamrolled in the process. Chris leaned forward, setting his glass down. "Also, you might want to think about a whistleblower packet. Something anonymous. Let the Department of Transportation and the investors know about the fraud. But don't rush it. You want to time this right so it all hits at once. When the investment deal is almost done, when Dale's still high off his success. It'll wreck his credibility, and with your wife involved, that's gonna hit harder." I sat back, staring at him, trying to imagine all of it playing out. It felt cold, but necessary. The stakes were too high now. There was no turning back. Chris's advice hit home, and I spent the next few days putting everything together. I crafted the whistleblower packet carefully. No fingerprints, no slip-ups. I included the falsified fleet data, the inflated reports, and the proof of how Dale had manipulated the company's books. I didn't stop there. I reached out to the venture capital group that had been sniffing around Jenna's company, the one she'd been so proud of. I told them everything, gave them the data in an anonymous email with a link to the whistleblower packet I just sent to the Department of Transportation. I didn't need recognition. I didn't need credit. I just needed the whole damn house of cards to come crashing down. In the meantime, I shifted gears to another side project I'd been quietly advising. A small software startup focused on optimizing supply chains. It wasn't anything big, but it was a start, and it had started gaining some traction. They'd been looking for someone to consult on logistics, and I'd helped them refine their system. I reached out, offering to step in more formally as a consultant. The offer came through in a week. A decent deal plus a small equity share in the company. It wasn't much, but it felt like a win in a world where I was losing so much. The best part? Jenna had no idea. I kept it all under wraps. Kept my head down at home. Didn't give her anything to question. She was distant, though. It wasn't just her usual busy at work vibe. No, something had shifted. I could tell she wasn't paying attention to me anymore. There were late nights at the office, new clothes, meetings I didn't know about. She wasn't talking to me as much. Her eyes weren't as warm when she looked at me. It was like she was mentally elsewhere, and I wasn't even a blip on her radar. It made sense. She was too caught up in the affair, the business, the lies. I didn't exist in her world the way I used to, but that was fine by me. She wasn't the only one changing. At night, when she was still gone, I'd go over the files again, double-check the emails. Everything was falling into place. I had the evidence. I had the strategy. And soon it would all come out on my terms. I couldn't wait for the day when it all came crashing down. When they both realized that I'd been playing the long game all along. And when it did, I'd be the one left standing. It was at the Trucking Innovation Expo where things took an unexpected turn. I hadn't planned on running into him, but there he was. Jeff Daniels, an old colleague from when I was still working in logistics. He'd been a senior auditor back then, always in the weeds of operations, poking through data like a detective. Now, he was a senior auditor at Red River Capital, the investment firm poised to swoop in and buy up Jenna's company. Small world, I guess. I didn't waste any time. We caught up briefly, talked shop for a minute, but my mind was already working. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. "Hey, Jeff," I said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "What do you think about operational fraud in the supply chain? You ever seen anything shady in your line of work?" He raised an eyebrow, probably figuring I was talking in hypotheticals. But I wasn't. Not anymore. "I mean, yeah," Jeff replied, his voice low. "You see it all the time, especially with companies trying to show better numbers than they actually have." "Why?" I smiled, pulling out my phone and tapping through the files I'd been collecting. "Well, let's just say I've got a little something here. Anonymized data, nothing too specific, but it points to some serious inconsistencies in how a certain trucking company has been reporting its fleet performance. Falsified reports, ghost trucks, inflated route times, that kind of thing." Jeff's eyes flicked over the screen, his interest piqued. "Wait a minute. You're saying this is a live case? Who's behind it?" "Hypothetical," I said, but it was far from it. I was just playing it cool. "Let's just say it's a company that's about to get a big investment. A firm like yours might be involved." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I could see the wheels turning in his head. "You have all this? Like solid evidence?" "Enough to raise a few red flags," I said. "But I need someone who knows how to move on this without making waves. Someone who can dig deeper and connect the dots. Thought maybe you could help." Jeff hesitated for a second, then nodded, slowly. "If you're serious about this, I'll get you a meeting with our managing director, Elaine Shore. She's been all over this acquisition. If you've got the goods, she'll want to see it." I felt a surge of satisfaction, but I kept it in check. "I can get you the full breakdown, Jeff. All of it. Just a few conditions." He raised an eyebrow. "Conditions?" "Yeah," I said. "First, I want a consulting contract with Red River after the acquisition. Second, I want Dale out. Fired, removed, whatever you want to call it. Third, when this blows up, I want public acknowledgement at the company's annual shareholder barbecue. I want people to know exactly why Dale's getting the boot." Jeff studied me for a long moment, but it didn't take long before he nodded. "You've got a deal. This is impressive. I'll set up the meeting with Elaine. She'll want to verify all of this, but I think you're onto something." Great, I said, pushing the files over to him. You let me know when the meeting's set. I'm not going anywhere. We parted ways after that, but the real work had just begun. Back at home, I didn't tell Jenna a word about the expo, about Jeff, or about the meeting with Red River. She was already distant enough. Her late nights were becoming routine, her phone always buzzing with messages I didn't ask about. I didn't care. I had everything I needed now. The next day, I sealed a copy of the whistleblower complaint I'd been holding on to, the one I'd sent to the Department of Transportation, into an envelope and sent it off to the local press. I didn't need it to make waves yet, but when the time came, I wanted them to have it. When it all unraveled, it would hit from all angles. A few days later, Jeff reached out. The meeting with Elaine was set. I took a moment to savor the feeling of everything coming together. The pieces were falling into place, and I was no longer just a passive observer in my own life. I was the one pulling the strings now. The calm before the storm felt almost too quiet. I kept watching Jenna as she came and went, as she grew more distant, more absorbed in whatever she was doing. She had no idea what was coming, and I wasn't about to warn her. The end of the game was coming, and I'd be the one to call the shots. The night before the barbecue, Jenna and I had a quiet dinner. Too quiet. I noticed the way she kept glancing at her phone, tapping her fingers against her glass. She didn't speak much, just picked at her food like it wasn't even there. I wasn't sure if it was nerves or guilt, but it felt like she was trying to pretend like everything was normal. So, big day tomorrow, I said, cutting through the silence. Company barbecue, right? She nodded, her voice tight. Yeah, just another routine event. Nothing special. Routine? I repeated, watching her face closely. That's funny. You've seemed a little off all week. Late nights, all the extra prep. You sure everything's just routine? Her eyes flickered for a moment, a brief flash of something before she masked it with a smile. It's fine, Mike. Really. It's just a lot of work, you know? A lot to coordinate for something like this. I leaned back in my chair, pretending to buy it. You think Dale's ready for it? I mean, tomorrow's a pretty big deal. What's he been like lately? I pressed, just a little more than I normally would, watching for any crack in her calm facade. Her fork paused midair. She set it down slowly, the smile slipping off her face. Why are you asking about Dale's wife? She asked, her tone sharp. I shrugged, playing it casual. I don't know. I was just thinking about how everything's been going with him lately. How his wife must be handling the whole business partner dynamic. I let that hang there, knowing she wouldn't bite, but she did. Her eyes went cold, narrowing slightly. What are you trying to say, Mike? I met her gaze steady. Just curious. I mean, I've heard some things. I thought maybe you'd have a better sense of how they've been getting along. She shifted uncomfortably, pushing her plate away from her, her fingers now gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her steady. There's nothing going on, Mike, she snapped, her voice too sharp. You're making something out of nothing. I didn't flinch. Right, nothing. Just like how it's routine tomorrow. Got it. She stood up abruptly, pushing her chair back. I'm going to bed. Her voice was tight now, strained. I'm exhausted, and I don't have time for this. I watched her walk away without saying another word. The door to the bedroom clicked shut behind her, and I sat there, letting the silence stretch. It was almost too easy. She'd cracked, but she didn't know it, and I was getting closer. After a few minutes, I stood up and walked to the living room, where I had my checklist laid out. The legal papers were filed. The consulting deal with Red River was signed. Dale's ouster was confirmed. The press-embargoed article was ready to drop at the exact moment everything hit the fan. I double-checked everything, timing, details, backup plans. I wanted it all to fall perfectly into place. I couldn't afford to screw this up. I reached into my closet and pulled out a small duffel bag. Nothing fancy, just enough for a few days. I packed light clothes, toiletries, a couple of books for the road. Tomorrow it all ends. After the barbecue, I wouldn't be living here anymore. I was done. Done with the lies, done with the games. Done with Jenna. She wouldn't see me coming. She wouldn't expect it. And when it all went down, I wouldn't need to be around for the fallout. I zipped up the bag and set it by the door, then sat back down to go over everything one last time. The game was about to change, and I'd made sure I had the upper hand every step of the way. The barbecue was everything I expected. Big, loud, and full of people pretending they were happy. It was held outside, under a tent with too many white string lights, plastic tables stacked with food, and an open bar that made everything seem a little too festive. Dale was in his element, shaking hands like he was running for office, greeting investors with that smooth, practiced smile of his. He was too high on himself, too sure of what was about to happen. Red River's investment, the whole deal he'd been boasting about for weeks. I took my time working the crowd. It was easy to find Carly and Tarek. Carly was holding court near the food table, chatting with a couple of the company execs. Tarek was hanging back, sipping a beer, looking like he was trying not to make eye contact with anyone. I caught his eye and he gave me a slight nod. "Everything set?" I asked him, keeping my voice low. He took a sip of his drink, his eyes flicking over to where Dale was shaking hands. "I can't believe this is happening," he muttered. "Dale's about to get wrecked." "Not just him," I said, glancing around at the investors and execs who had no idea what was coming. "It's all coming down today." Carly, overhearing, leaned in. "You know, Mike, I've been hearing whispers. People think Jenna's been too involved in all of this. I don't think she knows it, but she's been part of the manipulation." I kept my face neutral, but inside, I felt the sting. I didn't need to hear that. "Yeah," I muttered. "I know." The crowd was getting thicker now. Dale was getting ready to make his big speech. I could feel the tension building. People were excited, expecting the big announcement about Red River's investment. I moved a little further toward the stage, where Dale was setting up with his mic, all smiles and confidence. Just as he began his speech, talking about how the company was on the rise, how everything was going according to plan, Elaine from Red River Capital stepped into view, walking up to the front with a quiet but commanding presence. She adjusted her glasses and waited for Dale to finish his first sentence. "Actually," she said, cutting him off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "I'm here to share some exciting news." The crowd went silent, every pair of eyes now on her. "I'm pleased to announce that Red River Capital has acquired a controlling interest in Kingston Transport," she said, her voice clear and firm. A few scattered claps, polite but not enthusiastic. "And I'd like to take a moment to publicly thank Mike for his invaluable consultancy in uncovering significant operational inefficiencies within the company." The silence that followed felt like a weight pressing down on me. My heart was beating harder now, but I kept my face neutral. I could feel Jenna's gaze from across the crowd. Her eyes were wide, confused, and that moment of uncertainty was all I needed. I had her. I had Dale. Before anyone could recover from the shock of the announcement, Elaine didn't hesitate. "As part of our review, we've discovered troubling issues with the company's leadership. In light of ongoing ethical concerns, Dale Kingston will be stepping down as CEO, effective immediately, pending further investigation." Dale's face went pale. He opened his mouth to protest, but Elaine wasn't done. "Security will be escorting Mr. Kingston from the premises," she said smoothly, like it was just a formality. Two security guards stepped forward, their faces impassive. Dale's smile faltered, then cracked entirely as they approached him. He tried to laugh it off, but the tension in his shoulders was clear as they led him away. The whole crowd was watching in stunned silence, the only sound now the faint buzz of the overhead lights. I took the mic from the stand, letting the crowd settle. I looked over at Jenna, who was standing frozen, her face pale, and her mouth slightly open. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice calm but cutting through the murmur of whispers, "I want to thank Jenna for everything she's done for this company." Jenna's eyes snapped to me, a mix of confusion and dread flooding her expression. She opened her mouth, probably to ask what was going on, but I wasn't giving her the chance. "And now, I want to thank her for what she's done for me." I paused, letting it sink in. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope, my fingers steady despite the storm inside me. Jenna, after 8 months of betrayal and lies, I'm reclaiming my time. The envelope hit the air like a slap, and I handed her the divorce papers right there, in front of the crowd. She just stared at them, wide-eyed, speechless, unable to move. The whole place was dead quiet now, waiting for her response, waiting for some kind of explanation that never came. Her face flushed red as she glanced at me, her mouth trembling. "Mike! What?" I didn't wait for her to finish. I dropped the mic, turned on my heel, and started walking toward the exit. I wasn't going to stand there while she tried to explain herself. There was nothing left to say. Behind me, I could hear the collective gasp of the crowd, the stunned whispers, the calls of, "Is that real?" And, "Did he just?" I didn't care. It was done. I walked out of the tent, the weight of everything falling off me, step by step. Tomorrow would be the beginning of something new, something clean. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Weeks passed, and I found myself settling into a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. I was living in a modest condo near my mother's new care facility. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Small, quiet, just a place to call home while I kept myself busy. I'd found peace in simplicity. My mom's condition was stable, and she was getting the care she needed. I visited her often, spending the afternoons in her room, watching her play cards or talk about the old days. I didn't mind the silence that filled the air around us. Felt like calm after a storm. I was back in consulting, advising 2 regional transport startups. They didn't need much, just someone to help them fine-tune their systems, keep them running efficiently. I didn't mind the work, kept me sharp. I was good at it, and I liked the satisfaction of solving problems without the mess of corporate politics. No backstabbing, no drama, just clean, efficient work. Jenna had moved to a smaller city as expected, and from what I heard, she was starting over. No fight over the divorce terms. She didn't contest anything, not even the assets. She'd taken what she wanted and I'd taken the rest. I didn't care. I was done with her. Her new life had nothing to do with me anymore. Dale wasn't a problem either. He was under federal investigation for fraud. Red River had cleaned house at Jenna's old firm, scrubbing away every trace of the mess he'd left behind. I heard whispers that his career was over, maybe even his freedom. I didn't need to know the details. I didn't care. But I did feel a quiet satisfaction knowing he was paying for everything he'd done. And it was all going to catch up with him just like it did with Jenna. One afternoon, I sat at a small table in the cafe at the care facility, sipping coffee while my mom shuffled the deck of cards in front of me. Her hands trembled a little, but she still had the knack for shuffling that I remembered from when I was a kid. She dealt the cards, then looked up at me, her expression soft. "You always knew how to keep your head," she said, her voice slow but steady. Even when things got ugly, I smiled at her, my fingers tracing the edge of my coffee cup. "Didn't need to shout or get even," I replied. "I just needed to solve the problem." She nodded like she understood more than I'd said. I wasn't trying to prove anything to her. It wasn't about revenge. It was about fixing what had broken, getting my life back. And now that it was all in the past, I knew I'd made the right choice. We played cards for an hour, the rhythm of the game comfortable, familiar. I could hear the shuffle of the deck and the quiet hum of the facility around us. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control. The past was over, and everything was exactly where it should be. As I looked across the table at my mom, her slow smile still there, I couldn't help but feel a sense of calm wash over me. I hadn't just won. I had played the long game, kept my composure, and never once lost control. That was the victory.